Good morning, I'm Kaylee. Welcome to Caffrey Class Network. Today's edition is going to be about unemployment related to mental illness. Unemployment rates continue to rise regardless of the number of new jobs available. This lack of employment may be caused by employer bias towards hiring the mentally ill. Stigma can be described as a negative social, economic, or political attitude towards an individual's characteristics or identity. Mental illness is a major contributing factor to unemployment and lost job opportunities. The relative stigma alone can cause bias for hiring the mentally ill, despite adequate working habits and the ability to achieve the job that is desired. Let's take a look at a study conducted at Texas Tech University by Ashley Battistini. In their article titled Bias in Hiring Applicants with Mental Illness and Criminal Justice Involvement, they summarized their study that included hypothetical job applicants and their relationship to an employer's beliefs. During their study, the researchers discovered that despite the inclusion of appropriate educational and physical qualifications on an individual's resume, employers still showed a large bias in hiring those with a history of mental illness or criminal activity. Others in past research studies also concluded that if an employer has had past experiences with hiring or working with people with psychological disorders, they indicated a greater willingness to hire an applicant with a mental illness. To conduct this study, Battistini included participants who met the following criteria: being 18 or older, able to speak fluent English, and have had or are currently holding a job that requires them to hire employees. Incorporated in this experiment and its methods were 5 evaluative measures, including the generic work behavior questionnaire, initially established by Michonne. The second measure used was the attribution questionnaire, a 27-item assessment of 9 common stereotypes that individuals tend to hold about people with mental illness. The third measure was a social distance scale, where employees were questioned about their likelihood to distance themselves from a hypothetical candidate. Other scales and measures taken included the general perceived dangerousness scale and the level of familiarity scale. The results of the study concluded that individuals with mental illness and a criminal record were the least likely to be hired compared to other applicants in the field. A common issue that these stigmatized group experience is stated as, although existing programming within the mental health and CJ systems helps to educate and prepare those individuals for the job market, the decision to hire ultimately depends on the participation of employers. Battistini also summarizes potential future studies and what their principles should include. This includes further research and experimental techniques regarding specific bias employers have towards those with mental illness. This, in turn, can help aid in the creation of training programs to help target these specific matters by dispelling myths and offering appropriate resources. Those involved in the study and writing of the article hope that their research provides a better outlook for those struggling with unemployment predominantly caused by negative stigma. Increasing practices regarding aiding those in need of employment and proving bias myths legitimate can help the work field overall. And now we'll go over to Jeria for a deeper look into a second article involving further information about our news report.
Thank you, Kaylee. Kaja Oysterud, a social researcher based in Norway, conducted a similar assessment of the all-around negative impacts individuals with psychological disorders experience. Compared to Bastini's research, Oysterud focuses instead on the negative and positives of employers passed with mental illness in the workplace. If positive attributes are recorded, then an individual is more likely to succeed in their job field. This study aims to prove that previous experience with employees with mental illness can make employers view future hiring in a more positive light. Oysterud conducts this research in Norway, a country with a high employment rate but a considerable disability employment gap, where 18.9% of those who are disabled struggle with mental illness. It stated that mental illness can also be viewed as less acceptable than physical illness and may be misinterpreted as a personal trait of undependability. A similar field experiment to that in the last article was conducted. Using the creation of hypothetical job applicants who disclose mental illness, researchers then uncovered specific employee discrimination. The article also summarizes the role that stigma plays in hiring and how it causes harmful discrimination in the workplace. To perform the following field experiment, the researchers involved used 1,398 fictional hirees and paired them with 699 employers. These pairs had similar traits in common, such as age, gender, and educational experience. The presence of mental illness was disclosed in their resumes, but not directly specified. Some examples of jobs that these hypothetical individuals had the potential to be recruited for were a truck driver, carpenter, salesperson, and a kindergarten teacher. Through a series of follow-up interviews, Oysterud explored in depth the recruitment procedures, thoughts, and impressions that employers experience while viewing the said resumes. Oysteroyd recorded several findings through these interviews, including specific statements as to why certain individuals may not be fit for the job. Employers typically painted a stereotypical picture of each candidate, usually depicted as being fragile and unreliable. One hiring manager explained as follows: "We have a job that concerns installation and coordinating service assignments. And that means you will meet people who could be very angry, which make me think that it isn't a suitable job for someone who's depressed or easily can get depressed." An important factor in these employer-hiree pairs was the openness and honesty of the individual disclosing a mental illness. Employers were more likely to hire the person if they didn't keep particular traits secret and confess to specific habits that affected their everyday lives. An employer from the study states being open about it, I would say, as an employer, is much better in a way because you can be a bit more prepared. On the other hand, some hiring managers felt that a candidate's openness toward the topic was too much or over the top. This relationship sums up just how different biases can be person to person. It also depended on the employer's initial outlook on the given individual. If they had positive experience and engaged in more thoughtful conversation, the candidate was more likely to disclose their illness. While if the employee had a negative experience, the candidate was more likely to keep their illness to themselves. Overall, the study concluded that employers typically choose whether to have a negative or positive experience with those with mental illness. If employers reflected on being more inclusive and open, they'd encounter sounder outlooks and less stigma towards the group. Through the finding discovered, employers can be better guided to create inclusive and positive hiring experience. To better understand public opinions on the topic of hiring the mentally ill, we now go to Indian River State College's main campus. And now to Jackie.
Hello, my name is Jacqueline and I'm here with
Professor Murray.
First question is, where are you currently working?
I currently work at Indian River State College as an assistant professor of English.
How long have you been working here?
I just started this semester, but I've been in my field for over 12 years.
What is your opinion on hiring the mentally ill?
This is something that's near and dear to my heart because I have some family members that suffer from mental illness, and I can see the changes in them from when they were off their medication to now that they're on their medication, and I do see the potential for people struggling with mental illness to become stable and to become really important parts of our communities, working real jobs, and maintaining their treatment plans and becoming contributing members of society.
Would you hire a mentally ill person with a criminal record?
I personally would, with certain factors being considered. So, how long ago was the crime? What age were they? What type of crime was it? How have they personally rehabilitated themselves? Have they had any relapses in crime or situations that might, make it to where they're not a great candidate? What type of work will they be doing? If it was, potentially a crime with fraud and they're handling money, that might be a conflict, right? So it depends on the type of crime and the position that they're working in. But overall, I think after considering those factors, and if the right questions were asked and answered, I would be comfortable hiring someone, yes.
Mm-hmm. Do you know who company policy lets you guys hire?
So I don't work in HR at IRSC, and I am fairly new here still. I do know that they run background checks. So if somebody does have a really strong criminal record or a recent criminal record, that could definitely come up and flag them to where they're not getting an interview. And also, if it's a position where their offense might not come into play, they can take it on a case-by-case situation and allow the candidate to explain.
Thank you so much for answering my questions.
No problem.
So I'm Destiny, and I'm with.
Let's change that name.
Um, where are we currently at?
We are at Goodwill, Minnesota.
How long have you worked here?
I've worked here for about 3 years.
Okay. What is your role in the company?
I'm a key holder. It's basically a manager position.
And I would like to ask you, like, what's your opinion on hiring the mentally ill, like at this current location?
Mostly, we don't hire the mentally ill, mostly the disabled. If they are, we usually have a special program that caters to them, specifically for their limitations of what they can do and the roles that they can play with. But it has to go through a special program. I forgot what it's called specifically.
And I also would like to ask, do you guys hire people who are coming from jail or prison?
Yes, we do have a second chance program that we have, and that when they apply, it has to be listed on it, and we do the applications and everything as a rule result.
What is your company's policy for hiring?
Can you go into depth? What do you mean how?
Like, for the mentally ill, what is your company's policy?
Usually they have to be cleared by a doctor just to tell us what their limitations are, like said, and if they can interact with people, how well their social. I want to say social interaction with it, because as you know that when you're in a public place, people can be aggressive, so they want to know how they would, interact with everybody else.
Okay, and that's pretty much it. Thank you so much.